Well, hello again and welcome in. Wherever you are today, wherever you're listening from, I'm so happy to have you over to feast upon God's Word together. Get your plate ready today and take a seat. It's the 44, which is Matthew 4:4. Man cannot live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Let's eat. I'm your host, Jed Yancey, and you're in for a treat today, especially here as we start, because here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it note for note. Don't worry. Be happy. You know that song? And I'd love to keep singing it for you, but I think we'd all be better off with me not. Kind of embarrassing to even do that, but let me read the rest of this song. In every life, we have some trouble. But when you worry, you make it double. Don't worry. Be happy. Ain't got no place to lay your head. Somebody came and took your bed. Don't worry. Be happy. The landlord say your rent is late. He may have to litigate. Don't worry. Be happy. Ain't got no cash, ain't got no style. Ain't got no gal to make you smile, but don't worry. Be happy. Because when you worry, your face will frown, and that will bring everybody down. So don't worry. Be happy. Now, there is this song I wrote. I hope you learned it note for note. Don't worry. Be happy. Now, listen to what I said. In your life, expect some trouble. But when you worry, you make it double. Don't worry. Be happy. This song, if you haven't caught on, which I seriously doubt, was not written by me, but by Bobby McFerrin in 1988, and it topped the charts back then when I was 2 years old. Not that I remember that, but in fact, I was doing some reading on this song, and I read that it was the first a cappella song to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, a position that it held for several weeks, which is pretty crazy, right? And it's probably going to put you in the mood to listen to it, I know. So I'm going to link the song in the description for you to listen to right after this, because boy, do we need it. And I started to think, okay, well, why do we need it? Why does this song move us to a place of truly feeling happy? I don't know about y'all, but I've encountered so many unhappy people. And I don't think I need not name for you all the places you can go to find these people. But just last week, I personally was faced with a situation that created some unhappy feelings in my life, or had the potential to, at least. And then I was scheduled to go and get some lab work done and some blood drawn. And I pull into the place for my appointment, but I was an hour early. I got the time wrong. Of course I did. So I sat there on a bench outside of the office, and this lady walks up. And she walks up with this really big bag of books. And most of them were song books. So she pulls one out and she starts singing. Like, no shame, pretty public place next to a grocery store, and she's just singing these old hymns. So I just sat there at a complete loss of words. She had an incredible voice, and she's singing songs I knew, and she's singing them loud, and she's singing them proud and with a smile on her face, with so much heart and soul. So she got to a point where she then puts the song book away, and she pulls out a Bible and she's reading a psalm. And I'm not sure where she was exactly, but she wasn't just reading it, she was singing the psalm. So she's finally done. And I introduced myself, and we talked for a little bit, and wouldn't you know it, poor me and my problems and things going on in my life that had the potential of robbing me away from being happy didn't even cross my mind at that point, once I heard the stuff she was going through and had gone through and is still going through. And I said to her, well, man, like, you can sure tell Um, the flip side, like your voice is beautiful, and I appreciate so much that through that you're singing, and I know that you were probably singing for you, but I want you to know that did so much for me today. And after some more conversation, she said, well, every day, no matter what, I just choose to be happy. And I just sat there like, man, wow, what a message. And then had to go get blood drawn, which didn't make me happy. But I started to think, man, we need to hear more of that. And immediately, as my conversation with Kathy, was her name, ended, um, it reminded me of the song "Don't Worry, Be Happy," but also reminded me of Philippians chapter 4, one of my favorite chapters in all of the Bible. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, just a few verses, but this is what Paul says here in Philippians chapter 4: Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. Be anxious for nothing. Don't worry. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Verse 8, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. You see, Kathy, which by the way, I did tell her, I said, you just gave me the best podcast episode ever. But anyways, you see, like Kathy, we've all got this stuff, and I don't know what that is for you, but it's usually like really silly stuff, and it hangs us up, and we lose sleep, and we start arguments, and we can't focus, and we get so consumed with all that is going wrong or going bad, or what is not right and not good, that we completely lose sight of the joy and happy people that we should be, and the joy and happy lives we should be living. As I go back to what Kathy said, and I'm not going to tell you all the details of her story, except to say how impressive it is that she said in the midst of her stuff that every day what I do is I just choose to be happy. And every day it was clear in my conversation with her that she goes around from place to place just singing, and that makes her happy. But I want to make sure you heard what she said, what I think we hear Paul say too. Like, really hear that she chooses every day to be happy. And I think sometimes we forget that we have a choice in the matter at hand, and that our happiness is our choice and is usually dependent upon where we choose to put our focus and what we dwell on. Paul, from prison, mind you, writes, rejoice in the Lord always. And not just once, but like, let me tell you again, I say rejoice. Don't worry. Be happy. Whatever is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely, anything of excellence, anything worthy of praise. Don't miss this. Dwell on these things. Do you see the choice we make there? Like, we just don't choose right though, do we? And I wonder why. Well, in the context of what Paul says here, it takes me right back to where I was before I met Kathy. As I'm sure you can relate, I was dwelling on all the wrong things. And it's such an interesting thing, though, because like if you walk down the street and you poll people, what is the one thing that you want most out of life? What do the majority of them say? Or what do you think the majority of them would say? Well, I just want to be happy. I want to live a happy life. And yet, when it comes down to our everyday opportunity to choose to be happy and to do that, we do the complete opposite. I live consumed by my mistakes, or I dwell on what's going wrong. I dwell and think about what's bad. I can't move my focus away from things that are usually outside of my control to begin with. Now, don't get me wrong, like I don't want to be silly with this and say there aren't these little pockets of time in our lives where, yeah, it seems impossible to be happy through the circumstances of life. But it's usually not those big, hard to be happy circumstances we're faced with that rob us of truly being happy people. It's usually the small and the insignificant and the minor things that chip away at a happy life. I think as this pertains to Christians, like we all know the joy that awaits us and that happiness of what is to come for all of eternity. But you see, like, why is it that we make the choice that our happiness and our joy only one day awaits us? Why one day? Why not right now? Like we aren't designed to be unhappy and moping around and grouching our way through life on this earth. We should have this as Christians, an untouchable and unshakable joy and happiness, not just because of what awaits us one day. So why don't we? Well, again, in my mind, it goes back to what Paul said. And what an example of all the things to write of from a dirty and dingy prison cell. He writes, dwell on these things, the good things, the lovely things, not the small and insignificant or minor things that chip away at a happy life. You know, of all the places we could go to read of happiness that we should have, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to go to the man, right? To go back to Jesus and so very early in his ministry with the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5. Remember how all that starts? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And that word blessed there is the Greek word makarios, which the meaning of that is supremely blessed or fortunate. And get this, happy. Now, I know for us, so I'm sure the case for those listening to Jesus then, like right after he said that, it's like, wait, what? Blessed are the poor in spirit. I mean, amongst all the other things he says, I'm thinking back to that time as best I can and thinking some tuned him out like we still do today to these words, because the proof is in how we live our lives. Like it's not just blessed are the poor in spirit. It is blessed or supremely happy are those that mourn, he goes on to say, who are persecuted. Like there's some tough stuff here. And at the end of that section, he goes on to say in verse 12, rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. I mean, I could keep going. Chapter 5 is really hard teaching, most especially as it pertains to personal relationships at the end of that chapter. But as we swing back to the first words out of his mouth in this, it's curious, like, why start there, Jesus? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Well, being poor in spirit is a complete removal of you. And hear this part, removal of all those things that are outside the realm of control for me and for you. So why should we be happy and supremely blessed in that by having that attitude about us and living that way? Well, because that means I'm one that's so overwhelmed and yet have accepted how helpless I am in all of that. And in turn, how dependent I am on God rather than on myself. And these things happening that I've eliminated altogether the choice of dwelling on the garbage and the small and insignificant. And instead, I've put myself into a position to really not have any choice except to be happy because I choose him. Like if that's not enough, we Christians should truly be happy people because we live and we exist right now and have made the choice to believe the good news. In fact, I would put it down as the best news of all time. And it's because of that, and because we believe that good news that God sent his son and he lived and died and was raised to save a sinner like me. Because of that, and the right here and right now, not just one day. Like my friend Kathy, I will today choose happy. I will dwell on the things that are good and right and lovely. I will remove me, and most especially remove the things that are small and minor and insignificant things that are usually out of my control anyways, and move to a place that is completely dependent on God. And I'm convinced that it is then that you will have no other option but to not worry and be happy, because ultimately I made the choice to choose him day after day after day, no matter the circumstances. You're 44 today. Be happy, get happy, stay happy, and ultimately choose happy. I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening today. And until next week, keep on eating.